In my discussion of the myth of the sun in Plato's Republic, I mentioned the problem of reasoning with metaphor. Plato, of course, in his use of a myth, a fable, a metaphor, an analogy, an allegory, introduces this idea to us. And I warned at that time that there's two great dangers here. I want to recapitulate those dangers so that we can better understand how to react to our current circumstances and indeed many circumstances. We're talking philosophy. When we looked at Plato's Republic and we looked at these analogies, these allegories, these myths, these metaphors, I mentioned that the idea of metaphor has two problems. Problem one is that metaphor is analogy, is therefore probabilistic. If you can find a stronger argument than a metaphor, if you can find a stronger description than a metaphor, use that description. Metaphors will always fall short because they have to. They're only probabilistic. They're not deductive. Okay? But I've always felt that the other danger might be more important. And the other danger is the idea that the metaphor can overtake the reality. And by that I mean that we wind up using a term as a metaphor for something, and we use it long enough and often enough that we begin to confuse it with the real thing. The particular metaphor I wanted to talk about right now is war. We can trace this particular problem back to William James. Always nice to pick on your heroes, right? William James wrote a famous article, A Moral Equivalent to War, where he was trying to find a way to accomplish what war accomplishes in terms of global politics without having to be engaged in all the immorality that war seems to involve us in. What tended to happen from that is that whereas he meant something to be an equivalent to war, not war itself, but like a war enough it achieves the same ends, but it's not the same thing. See, it's a metaphor, it's a comparison. And that metaphor to war shortly became the war. I mean, in my lifetime, we've talked about the war on poverty, the war on drugs, the war on terror. We have the war on the coronavirus. None of these are wars. They are metaphorically using the word. War is not simply a big fight. War serves a particular purpose in the world. That's how St. Thomas can describe what a just war is. I believe it was Clausewitz who said that war is just the extension of diplomacy. It's what you do when you can't talk anymore in order to settle a problem between two countries, two peoples. Not what we do to try to wipe out something that we don't like having around. It's a metaphor, see, because war often wipes things out. So does a good sponge. No one's going to confuse a war and a sponge. But when we start using that metaphor too often and too long, we can come to confuse the actual use of the word with the metaphorical use of the word. We are not at war. There is a metaphorical use of war going on around us, but the sorts of things that involve a war between two peoples, settling a political difference of some sort, and use political in the broadest sense there so that it covers any interactions between peoples. So economic purposes, religious purposes, any of them, okay? But the idea is it's people, groups of people interacting with each other, and they've done everything else they can to settle their differences, and they wind up trying to kill each other over it. That's war. Poverty doesn't attack people. Drugs aren't another country. These are concepts, ideas, or in the case of the coronavirus, a virus with no thought processes, no way to carry out a program, and certainly no cultural desires that it wants to impose on us. This is not a war. I say that, one, because there are laws on the books that permit things to be done during wars. There are things that have been done during wars that may well have been justified during a real war that aren't necessarily justifiable through a metaphorical war. So that's reason one I warn. Reason two is that war is terrible. Real war doesn't just destroy lives, it destroys minds. It destroys cultures. It destroys things that, it destroys poverty because it destroys the very foundation of a society, and there's no society left, and there's no funding, there's no money, so there can't be any poverty because poverty is the result of having that structure and not being successful in it. Well, having that structure, no poverty. How do you conduct a war on drugs? A literal war on drugs. What would you do? You get out a gun and start shooting drugs? You can shoot people, but then you're not carrying out a war on drugs, you're carrying out a war on people. And war should be a last resort, and war is terrifying. Now, what we're going through with the coronavirus terrifies many of us, but it isn't war. Keep that in mind as we go forward. Don't let anybody push you into doing something under the name that we're at war. We're not. And that's true of any number of other metaphors that we should all watch closely. A metaphor is not the thing itself, and those things which are designed to be used in the face of the thing itself may not be appropriate when used with the metaphor. Okay. Hope you got a little something out of this. If you liked it, like it. If you want to subscribe, you haven't subscribed already, please do subscribe. Share it with anyone you know who you think might get something out of it. I'll be back soon with some more wonderful philosophical thinking. You keep talking philosophy. Special thanks go to George Hales, executive producer. If you want to be part of the support team, please go to patreon.com/talkingphilosophy for more information. A special shout out to format consultant Nora Barnes and story consultant Andrew Beeman Cavallaro, without whom this experience would be much less rich.